So glad to see you all here. It's nice to see you fellowshipping. I'd like to let you know that we will begin in about 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Thank you.
this world, but give me Jesus. And when I come to die, oh, when I come to die, and when I come to die, give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You can have all this world.
You can have all this world.
You can have all this world, but give me Jesus.
Good afternoon to everyone. And it is a good afternoon because we are remembering and recalling and celebrating the life of a much more than good lady. The bulletin tells you that I'm Pastor Mike Dema. What it doesn't tell you is that it has been my privilege to be one of Carol's pastors. And I truly mean that. I want to express on behalf of Carol's immediate family their appreciation and their gratitude for all the shows of kindness and love and comfort that you have displayed to them over the several weeks, recent weeks. Together, it is also my privilege to acknowledge Carol's God and to begin this service by talking to him. Shall we pray? God in heaven, we acknowledge that you are the originator of life. You are the sustainer of life, you are the enhancer of life, and you are the one who grants life eternal. You are the one that will make life perfect again. And we want to say thank you, Lord, for intersecting our lives with Carol's. Thank you for doing that. Thank you that we have a day like today to celebrate your life through her. Thank you for being here and being that God of all comfort, that Father of compassion that you are to each of us. Thank you for your sweet Holy Spirit here, Lord, to give us that assurance, that hope, that healing, and all the other things that we need from you. Amen. Thank you again for your presence here. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. A man who needs no introduction. Uncle Bob. I call him Uncle Bob. Some of you don't know, Bob Paulsen and my mother share the exact same birth date. Same date.
She was born before me.
Right. Bob claims they were twins. She came out first. He's the youngest. Love you, bro.
Hello, I'm Carol Paulsen's husband. There's a reason for that. There's a reason that I told you that. It's been a tough month for me, but we're going to try to get through it. And we appreciate everybody that's shown here. Carol would say, why'd they come? Why did they come? Because that was Carol. Gina Huben, is she here? Gina, did you make it? Hi, dear. Gina said something to me at the academy about 3 weeks ago. She said, Bob, I knew you well, but I didn't know Carol except from afar. And that was a story of her life. I got a call from somebody very special to me, who I got acquainted with really well in Russia, Elder Ted Wilson and Nancy. And Nancy said the same thing. She said, Bob, I know you well, but I just knew Carol from a distance. And you know, that's what Carol wanted. Amen. Precious, precious lady. I talked to the kids. My kids, I've got 100 cards on my desk in the motorhome. I don't think I'll get 100 cards when I die from everybody, but the kids got almost that many themselves. And the things that the young people are saying about Carol that are friends of my family are amazing. And George called me, George Vachon from California, and expressed his feeling about Carol. And I said, George, when somebody dies, you know, they always preach you right into heaven, and everything you did was wonderful. But I said, if even 1/4 of the things that they're saying about Carol is true, she was an amazing woman. And George said, Bob, I want to tell you something. George said, 100% is true.
Amen. Preach it, Daddy.
I'm very fortunate that I have 2 or 3 very special friends. I've got a lot of friends, and I'm fortunate with that, but I've got some that I really call my closest friends. I'm so glad that 3 of them are here today. We have Garwin and Marilee McNeilis, my best friend I travel all the world with, and can't remember the other 2. But he's sitting back here with his precious wife, Marilee. And Marilee, if you want to know, is the one that taught my wife how to shell. Carol didn't know one side of a shell from another, the same as Garwin and I still don't know one side from the other. You know, we used to shell with them once in a while down in the Bahamas. And as we picked up a shell and would hand it to them, they would look at it and say, oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. But we'd watch him and he'd go like this. And pretty soon they'd open their hand and dropped it. They were just trying to encourage us to keep going, but we knew we'd picked up a piece of junk. We didn't know much difference. Carol wanted to be, she wanted to be unknown completely. And to me, this whole program today is about Carol. It's not about me. I just wished sometime somebody would come up and say to Carol, or say to me, oh, you're Carol Paulsen's husband, instead of the other way around. And Carol didn't mind. And years ago, Bette Midler did a movie called Beaches, and in that was one of the most beautiful songs that I thought I'd ever heard, because it described Carol to a T. And I called my grandkids and asked them if they'd do a duet for me and learn that song, Wind Beneath My Wings. Sydney said, Grandpa, I don't think I can do it. And I said, Tiger, would you work it up then? And last night they surprised me and they did it together, and they're going to sing that right now. Wind Beneath My Wings. Thank you very much.
Must have been cold there in my shadow to never have sunlight in your face. Then you were content to let me shine. You always walked a step behind. I was the one with all the glory, and you were the one with all the strength. face without a name. Beautiful smile to hide the pain. Did you ever know that you're my hero? You're everything I would like to be. And I can fly higher than an eagle. 'Cause you are the wind beneath my wings. You might have appeared to go unnoticed, but I have it all here in my heart. I want you to know I know the truth. 'Cause I would be nothing without you. Did you ever know that you're my hero? Everything I wish I could be. And I could fly higher than an eagle. 'Cause you are the wind beneath my wings. Did I ever tell you you're my hero? Everything I wish I could be. And I can fly higher than an eagle. 'Cause you are the wind beneath my wings. Thank God you are the wind beneath my wings.
Carol Ruby Bartz Paulsen was born in Columbus, Wisconsin on February 13th, 1935, and left us on January 6, 2018. Carol left behind many family and friends and was survived by her brother, Don Bartz, her dear husband, Robert Paulsen, her two sons, Dean Paulsen and Doug Paulsen, her two daughters, Dawn Heilbrunn and Diane Meharry, 8 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren. Carol met Bob in Tennessee at Southern Missionary College in 1954. Interestingly, Bob was dating someone else at the time, but after meeting Carol, that situation quickly dissolved itself, and they started dating and ended up getting married on June 3, 1956. They were married for 61 years. Mom used to joke that their marriage was a 50-50 deal. She got to be boss for the first 50 years, and Bob would get to be boss the second 50 years. But after they were married for 50 years, she decided to extend her option on that. Everyone thought Bob was in charge. Sorry, Bob. They moved to Washington State in 1963. What a blessing to have this family in Washington State. She was Bob's secretary for 2 different companies for 50-plus years and was an excellent bookkeeper. Never once missed a bill, never once couldn't get the 4 different checking accounts to balance that she managed. She kept their business in order, never missing a beat, all the while raising their children, and many times all by herself while Bob was out on the road working. She was always actively involved with the church and school, volunteering, baking, greeting, visiting the sick, and literally being the wind beneath her family's wings. She was the most compassionate person you could meet. As the kids moved out on their own and she started having a little more free time, she picked up her beloved hobby of shelling. She went on many shelling trips over the years with her dearest friends, Marilee, Carolee, and Anita. They called themselves the Shelling Grandmas. She would love coming home and showing off her newest treasures. These trips were highlights in her life. Her family was also the highlight of her life. Nothing gave her greater pleasure than getting together with her family. Her grandbabies and her great-grandbabies held a very special place in her life as well. She loved her grandbabies so much and always looked forward to watching them, even up until last fall when Bob and Carol sold their home in Milton. Her last day with her family was so beautiful. They had the whole family in her room, and it's like God gave them this wonderful window where she was coherent most of the time. And they played her favorite Christian songs like Blessed Assurance, and they read underlined passages from her Bible. And each family member took their turn in saying goodbye so she would know she didn't have to hang on any longer for them. The family asked if she wanted to go to sleep, so the next thing she would see is Jesus. And she said, yes, I want to go home to heaven. It was so sweet and special that God gave her family this time to say goodbye and that she did not have to suffer long. Carol knew she was safe in her Heavenly Father's arms, and she is resting in peace, waiting for the day when we will all be reunited again. She is gone for now, but she will never be forgotten, and we will hold a piece of her in our hearts until we get to see her again at the gates of heaven.
Test. Blue.
Turn on the button, brother. Blue. Come on, get closer.
You brought notes?
Yeah, I hope you did, because once you start talking off the script, we're in trouble.
You got a script?
Well, it's a real honor for Doug and I to introduce our speaker for Mom's Life Tribute this afternoon. He was a minister for many years, a missionary in Africa for 5 years, the ministerial director for the Oregon Conference, and the conference president of Montana, and the conference president of Arizona, where he retired and now resides. He's a real VIP to our family and to many others where he has served. In fact, Debbie and I were very blessed to have him marry us over 33 years ago.
I got Skip.
And in case you don't know, Skip McClanahan's our cousin. He married Doug, and so. And it was a 30. Yeah, except
He was so discouraged he left the ministry.
in fact, Doug, weren't you named after him?
After Herman?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I was named after Herman Bauman But what's weird is I'm not a professional speaker. What's weird, for the first 6 years of my life, I really seriously thought I was Douglas H. Paulsen. And when I came to school here at Northwest Christian, Nelson Crane, I mean, I'm old, Mrs. Crane was my teacher. She
Wow,
said,
you are old.
Can you spell your middle name? And I go, what, middle name?
H?
H? I went home that night and Mom and Dad broke the news to me.
Anyway, he's definitely a VIP to our family. In fact, he was a groomsman at our parents' wedding. He's a super guy and very special.
He really is super. He's been special to our family for years. And I had the opportunity because, you know, friends come and go, but they've always been family. And Elder Dennis Carlson is here tonight. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have spent time, served some time on the General Conference Committee back in Silver Springs. And Herm was the conference president in Arizona at the time, and I was so green, I didn't know what I was doing. Well, Herm took me under his wings. He introduced me around. He told me how to vote.
Very good.
There is laughter. And remember Lito's Pizza? Oh, where's Herm? Right there. Yeah. Lito's Pizza. And then in year 2000, General Conference was in Toronto. And two guys that are here tonight, Pastor Bill Roberts and Jay Kuhn, their wives, Doreen and Deb. We were hanging out that whole time, having a blast. And we were outside of the Sky Dome, and Herm and Jan come up, and Herm goes, "Hey, who are these guys?" I go, these are up-and-coming young pastors in the Washington Conference. These guys are awesome. And, you know, after a little conversation, Herm says, "You see that CN Tower right there? Tonight, we're all going to the top of that CN Tower, and we are gonna have dinner on me." And I go, "Yeah, we're all in on it, right, Bill?" We were in on it. So we go up there, have the best time of our life. Herm's telling stories. You know, the food was fantastic. The view, you've never been up there. I mean, just wonderful. And so we had our evening. And the next morning, Elder Dennis Carlson, who was our conference secretary at the time, said, "Hey, Ann and I are going to go down and take a quick trip to Niagara. Do you want to come?" And I go, "That'd be fantastic." So, you know, I hop in, and so, you know, I'm just talking and telling him about the whole evening last night, and Herm just treating us this, Herm that, Herm, you know, all this. And Dennis just looks at me like I'm super naive and starts laughing and goes, "Doug, that's a textbook play on how one conference president steals two young pastors from another conference."
Well, let's go on with this introduction and wrap it up, please. Dad said...
I got more.
I know. Dad said you don't want to jab him too much because he's getting the mic next.
Yeah, we don't want to jab her.
He might turn the table on us. So it's our honor to introduce Uncle Herm.
Uncle Herm.
Aren't they something special? And you can understand that's why Carol was such a special individual to produce two young men like this. Bob had something to do with it, but she was the main one, I'm sure. Well, we are here today to honor Carol, an individual who was very special to all of us, and that's why we're here. This place is jammed full. To be here today is a real thrill for me and an honor to be able to share this message today. We thank God for Carol and everything that she means to all of us, everything that she has meant for nearly 83 years. She would have been 83 the 13th of February. I remember when I used to make birthday cards for her, I loved rubbing it in. She was the oldest of our foursome, Bob, Carol, Jan, and me. She was number 1. I was number 2. I don't know for sure what that means. But you know, I think I've known Carol longer than anybody here except her brother Donnie. The rest of you know her well, but I know her well and long. I used to see her at Wisconsin camp meeting. Short blonde girl with a tall, dark-haired fella, Tom Wilson. I used to watch them walk around the campgrounds, but in 1952, I had the privilege of meeting her personally and discovered that she was a senior at Highlandale Academy. And I decided to go to Highlandale Academy as well. And there I got to know Carol very well. In fact, we dated. Before Bob ever knew her, we dated. In fact, Bob's brother Jack and I and Vonnie and Carol used to go out for grilled cheese and milkshake every now and then. So it was very special. We had a special senior skip day our senior year at Highlandale. We decided one evening as we met together in the ad building that we were going to take off the next day and go out and do something for that whole day. And we talked to all the seniors, got them together. There were only 18 of us. And we decided we would all do it. So after midnight, I slipped out, went home and got my car. We called another friend from Minnesota to come. And in the morning of senior skip day after breakfast, we walked down the road a little ways, got into our cars and took off. Went over and visited a Harmony Cave in Minnesota, stopped down through northeastern Iowa and got home 10 o'clock at night. The faculty was all there ready to meet us when we arrived. But we knew that they wouldn't dare kick out the whole senior class. Everyone went. We were right. The only thing they did, they said we had to write a letter to our parents and tell them the awful thing we had done. My parents knew. I went home and got the car the night before. And we had to promise the Highlandale faculty that we'd never do it again. Well, we didn't plan to. Actually, as spring came on, there were only 12 of us seniors remaining. And we decided we would take a senior class trip that would be more amazing than anybody had ever done before. And so we went over to EMC to visit the college in Michigan, went down and visited Madison College in Tennessee, Southern Missionary College in Collegedale, Tennessee, looking over all the schools to see where we wanted to go to school the next year. While we were at Southern, we went out to Georgia to visit Wildwood. And there at Wildwood, we met an individual who really changed our lives in many ways. His name was Desmond Doss. We met his wife, Dorothy, and their son, Tommy. Desmond Doss of The Unlikeliest Hero, and the individual who was the hero of Hacksaw Ridge, an individual who remained a friend for many years after that. Well, all the schools tried their best to really impress us that we needed to come there. But Southern hospitality won our hearts, and 4 of us decided to go to school there the next year. As we consider the tragedy that brings us together here, I do want to share with you this little piece that I got from Jane Botsford. I notified John and Jane about Carol, and Jane responded to me. Forgive me for reading this. She said, "Thank you so much for sharing the sad news of Carol's death. Such a sweet lady." And then she said, "My precious John continues to deteriorate. He was placed on hospice care last July. He's still such a sweet man. I take him to the office a few times a week with me, and he knows me some of the time, holds my hand and says, 'What a sad thing it is, you have to deal with this.' And then in a few minutes, he will ask me if I have children and where I'm from." John sadly has Alzheimer's. Herm, please keep us in your prayers. I'm trying to accept what has happened to John. Such a godly, kind, gentle man. I'm on a roller coaster of emotions, knowing that he isn't fixable and that I can't do anything to stop the progression. So I hug him a lot and pray the Lord will keep me healthy to be able to continue to take care of him and continue working. And then this is something very applicable to us. Every day, John thinks he's at Highlanddale, the little academy where we all attended. His memories are good of those years there. One day he was so distraught with tears, he said, I don't know what's happening to me. I have so much I want to tell everyone. He wants all of you to know how much he loves you and how you all made his life so much better. He carries his books under his arm from one end of the house to the other. He has no short-term memory. He has no appetite, has lost 19 pounds since July. And then she pleads, please let all the Highlanddale family know that they were such a part of his life and the love he has for all of you. He keeps his yearbook and your books, that is books that I've written, near his side of the bed. They give him comfort. What a sad thing. One of the most brilliant individuals I've ever known. It's a hard thing to say. And at a time like this, it hardly seems appropriate, but there are things worse even than death. Our second year at Southern Missionary College, 4 more graduates from Highlanddale came down and enrolled there, Bob and Don. It was a beautiful experience for all of us. We understood very soon the reason Bob was there, of course, was to make Carol his own. College didn't mean too much, but the fact that Carol was there meant a great deal. And he won her heart. And that July 1956, I was privileged to be a part of their wedding. And they made their home at Wyazina, Wisconsin. It was a small little apartment they had. Only had 1 bedroom. In fact, they only had 1 bed. And I used to go and visit them, and we would all sleep together in that 1 bed. Bob always slept in the middle. I don't know why that was. But then Don and I decided to transfer from Southern Missionary up to Emmanuel Missionary College. We went and talked with the president and said, we want to come to school here, but we don't want to live in the dorm. What can we do to live out in the community? And the president said, the only way you can do that is if you live with relatives. So we adopted some relatives. Tom Wilson's mom and dad, Aunt Opal and Uncle Homer became our relatives for that school year, and we lived with them. The next year, which was to be my senior year at EMC, we persuaded Bob and Carol to move over and live in the village in Berrien Springs, and then Don and I would live with them. We would take care of the utilities, including heating the house in the winter, and Carol and Bob would provide the food. And it was a great arrangement, we thought, and they accepted. One thing that made it really special was that Dean had already been born, and so he was there with us. Well, Bob worked at a service station pumping gas, and he wasn't earning enough money. He got a little frustrated with the job, and before long, he quit and went to Chicago to work as a private nurse. And he began to tell us of all the money he was making, and so Don dropped out of college and went over to Chicago to be a private nurse, too. And sadly, I was left there alone with Carol and Dean. Bob used to come home on the weekends to see Carol and Dean. And I had just started playing golf. Walt Sherman, good friend of mine at EMC, had taught me to play golf. And so I introduced Bob to the game. And on Sunday, we always went out and played golf. The little weekend he had with Carol. So she pretty much had to make the decision that she better learn how to play golf as well. But during the week, I would take Carol and Dean to the grocery store, and I'd carry Dean while Carol picked out the groceries. One really special day, a lady came up to Dean and me and was making over him, saying, "Oh, what a cute little guy this is." And after talking about how cute he was, she patted me on the arm and said, "He looks just like his daddy." It was about a year later that I married Jan. And the four of us, Jan and I, Bob and Carol, became very close friends. Of course, we played a lot of golf together. When I graduated from the seminary in Washington, D.C., they came out for my graduation. We traveled home together. And then it wasn't too long after we took up ministry in Wisconsin that they moved to Washington. We stopped here to visit them in Tacoma on our way to the General Conference session. And before too long, we got a call to come out to Upper Columbia, which included northern Idaho, northeastern Oregon, and eastern Washington. So we were just across the mountains from them. They often told us about the beautiful mountain called Rainier. We never did see it. Always was raining when we were here. But as time went on, we had a little boy came along, and wanting a wonderful name for him, we named him Robert Dean, after Bob. Precisely, Bob is here today because he loved his Auntie Carol as well. And then when they had their second son, as Doug shared with you, they named him Douglas Herman, but they didn't even tell him that's what the name was. And so he always went by Douglas H. Bob and Carol were visiting us in Jefferson, Wisconsin one day where we were holding some evangelistic meetings. And before they left, Jan said to Carol, "Come back to the bedroom, I want to tell you something." She said, "Carol, I'm pregnant." Carol said, "So am I." Jan said, "When are you due?" She said, "October 13th, so am I, the same date." Well, it was a really special time as we looked forward to October 13. In fact, we called person to person several times to Washington to talk to them and say, "We want to talk to Dawn Paulsen. I wonder if she's there." "Well, she's not here." "Are you expecting her soon?" "Yes, in a day or two." So we took advantage of our situation and found out exactly when she was born. And then after Dawn, they added Diane. Tragically, her parents were killed in a plane crash, and they adopted Diane as their fourth child. Perfect connection with the family because her name even started with the letter D. After a while, Jan and our three boys and I went to Africa to serve as missionaries. Bob and Carol communicated with us regularly. In fact, they sent us tapes from some of the TV programs. Tennessee Ernie Ford, Johnny Cash, some of the others of special music. They sent us music from the Heritage Singers, which we had never heard of even. And then when it was time for us to come home on furlough, they came to Africa, to Nigeria, to meet us and travel back together. It was a very special time. In fact, the night before Bob and Carol were to arrive, we told the boys, "Now you got to go to bed and sleep well and get up really, really early so we can go to the airport to meet them." And as we got ready to go to bed, we checked in their room and we saw the three boys all there on their beds, fully dressed, socks, shoes, everything, so they would be sure not to miss Bob and Carol when they came the next day. Well, we had a great time traveling together. We went down to South Africa. And there, Bob and I, as we walked the streets, were rather special, I guess. Our faces were sort of white. And there was a very attractive young woman who tried her very best to get us to come up to her room and visit for a little while, but we passed up the opportunity. We went to Kenya along with a number of other countries, and there we saw lots of the African animals, elephants, hippos, lions, everything you could imagine. And then went over the mountains to where the Maasai tribe lived. Now, the Maasai are individuals who believe that they own all the cattle in the world. They have a delicacy that they drink. It's milk and blood. And we were looking for someone who could be a good guide for us to take us around to see the Messiah. There was a little boy about 12 or so, and he was pleading with us to hire him. We weren't too sure he would be a good choice, but finally he convinced us when he said, "With me, everything will be impossible." Well, we thought we can't beat that, so we hired him, and he actually took us around to some of their homes, which were just made of twigs covered with cow dung. We saw the Maasai people sleeping out in the barnyard among the mud and the other things that are in barnyards. And he gave us a really good view of the Maasai and how they live. We saw some of the young men dressed in their covered with red ochre and carrying blankets and spears. It was a very interesting experience. From there, we went to Europe. And of course, in Europe, we had to go to Germany so that we could see Carol's and my roots, where we came from. And one thing we knew we needed in Europe and Germany was pizza with German beer. The Germans make beer that is not fermented. And so we bought some of that, went to our place, and we had pizza and beer. The women and the boys, the kids couldn't handle it at all. So Bob and I had to be big fellas, and we drank all the beer and we ate the pizza. And then about 3 in the morning, we heard an awful commotion coming from their room while Bob was getting rid of his beer. From there, we went to Dachau, the Nazi concentration camp where the Jews were exterminated. Tragic thing to see the inhumanity of man to man. We went to England and visited around there, went to Buckingham Palace where the Queen lived. It was all very exciting, but the most exciting thing of all was that we had our own queens, Carol and Jan, better than any Queen England ever had. Well, on our permanent return from Africa 3 years later, we moved to Washington State. Bob and Carol met us at the airport. They were the first ones we saw when we arrived here. They took us down to Portland to pick up an automobile that we had ordered. And a little over a year later, we were in Massachusetts teaching at Atlantic Union College. And Bob and Carol and the kids all came out in their motorhome to see us. Great time. We showed them some of the historical sites around, took them to Fenway Park to see the Red Sox, I think in a doubleheader. It was a great event. And then we moved to Portland, very close to where they lived. We could get together often, play golf, and do other things. But when we arrived that day in Seattle, as we changed to another plane to go down to Portland, and Bob and Carol were in Portland to meet us there, our plane was hijacked. Bob and Carol were there to meet us at the airport in Portland, and the person at the counter said, "I'm sorry, the flight has been delayed a bit." And Bob kept checking, and they said, "It's still delayed." And finally he said, "All right, don't give me any more of your nonsense. I want you to tell me the truth. What is the skinny on this airplane?" And finally they whispered to him, "It's been hijacked." But they didn't give up on us. They stayed there, and we arrived about 12 hours late. Bob were there along with many photographers and reporters, and they met us and took us out to the camp meeting so we could meet our new folks in the Oregon Conference. It was really special to be that close to them after many, many years. And then I was invited to hold a field school and evangelistic meeting for Andrews University at Auburn at the city church. And it worked out just right, so I could stay with Bob and Carol, live with them for about 6 weeks while I held the evangelistic meetings and taught the school. What a blessing. Carol was such a great cook, such a beautiful individual, wonderful to be with, and it was great to have that time with them again. Carol was a great shell collector, as you already heard. In fact, her license plate said, "I shall." Very special. I conducted Carol's dad's funeral back in 1983. And before the funeral, I asked Bob, how long ago did he retire? Bob said he retired November 29, 1983, the day he died. That's pretty much true of Carol as well. Until the day she died, she was active and wonderful and beautiful in sharing the great message of Jesus through the way she lived. At General Conference session in 1985, we were in New Orleans. Bob and Carol were there, of course. Jan and our son Bob went with them, and Garwin and Marilee McNeilis down to their place in the Bahamas. They went boating, fishing, had a great time. They invited me to go, but I said, no, I'm here as a delegate. They're paying me to be here. I better stay and do my job. And while they were gone, I walked into the meeting one morning, saw my name up on the screen, and watched as I was voted in to be the director of personal ministries for the new Africa Indian Ocean Division. I didn't know what to do, didn't know what to say. I just been elected president of the Montana Conference. How could I go to Africa now? Our boys were in school looking for wives and getting an education. And ultimately we turned on the call, but it hurt a great deal. But it was a good thing I did, because I got to conduct Dean and Debbie's wedding. What a special time that was, 33 years ago. Hardly seems possible. We attended Doug's and Dawn's weddings, of course. And then a bit later, Doug was elected to be a member of the General Conference Committee. It was a thrill to have him with us there in Washington. And I did kind of clue him in on some of the details of his job and did introduce him to the best pizza place in the world, Lito's Pizza. At General Conference in 2010, it was in Atlanta, Georgia. We were again privileged to be there. Bob and Carol were there. And that was a very special time, because it was in Atlanta, Georgia in 1958 that Jan and I were married. Bob and Carol, of course, were there for that. He was the best man in our wedding. And he's never failed to make that clear all along the way. I was the best man in that wedding, and I'll always be the best man. And then back in 2006, I had the incredible privilege of being the master of ceremonies at their special celebration of their 50th wedding. What a beautiful event that was. And I got to sing for them again, too. Well, at times like this, when conducting a service for a burial, I can't help thinking back to days in Africa. In Africa, they always carried the people to the burial place. And as they carried them along, they kept singing over and over again, Odabo, Odabo, which means goodbye in Yoruba. What they were saying is, goodbye. We know you're going somewhere. We don't know for sure where. What a wonderful thing. When we have Jesus, that changes everything. And so as we're here today, we know very well that though Carol is gone, we know where she is, and we know where we will see her again. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 16 through 18 remind us, for the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. Wherefore, comfort one another with these words. How comforting those words are. Paul Harvey, in his famous radio broadcast one Easter, said, Jesus came to this earth to show us how we should live. Then he died and rose again to show us we can do that too. What a wonderful assurance it is to have today, to know that Carol will do that as well. As we continued our journey from Nigeria, Coming home with Bob and Carol, we went through Israel. There we went up on Mount Carmel and saw the place where Elijah had challenged the priests of Baal, and his faith was wonderfully rewarded. We went to Bethlehem and visited the place where Jesus was born. We went to a little souvenir shop that's owned and operated by an Adventist gentleman. And while we were looking at some of the souvenirs, wondering what to buy, a man came along with a goatskin bag under his arm that was full of carob juice. He was selling it. Tried to sell us some. We really were not interested. But the owner of the shop said, "Oh, this stuff is really good. Let me get you some." And so he bought us some carob juice that came out of goat skins. And we drank it, and we didn't even get sick. While we were there, we went to the little village of Nain in Galilee, not far from Nazareth, where Jesus was born. There, Jesus and his disciples were traveling one day, and they came upon a funeral procession. There, a young man was being carried to the gravesite, his widowed mother weeping bitterly. Jesus stepped up to the coffin, said, "Young man, I say to you, arise." And he did. Jesus was so good at breaking up funerals. In Mark chapter 5, we're told again of another experience. A man named Jairus came to see Jesus, and he said, "My daughter is very ill." Jairus was the leader of the synagogue, probably at Capernaum. And he said, "I want you to come and heal my daughter." Jesus immediately went with him, but on the way they came to a place where there was a lady who'd had an illness for 12 years. And Jesus took time to stop and heal her on the way. By the time he got to Jairus' home, the little girl was already dead. He said, "It's too late. Don't worry. There's no need to come now." But he went right up to the bedroom where the little girl lay, took her by the hand and said, "Daughter, I say unto you, arise." And she rose, was alive again. In John 11, we're told the wonderful story of Jesus and his friend Lazarus and his sister Mary and Martha, Jesus' best friend. Lazarus, sadly, one day became very ill, and Jesus was sent a message to come and see him. He didn't hurry there, and by the time he arrived, Lazarus was already been dead for 4 days and was buried. Mary and Martha met Jesus, and they were so sad. They said, "Oh, if you'd only been here, our brother might not have died." And Jesus said, "I'm the resurrection and the life. Don't you believe this?" Oh, they said, "We know that. We know that at the end of the world, he'll live again, but we're concerned about now." And Jesus said, "Take me to the place where he's buried." They didn't feel that they could do that, but ultimately he persuaded them. And then in John 11:35, it says simply, Jesus wept. Oh, how sad he was over the loss of his friend Lazarus, and how sad he was for those who didn't believe. And there he stepped to that cave where Lazarus had been buried, and he said, "Please remove the stone." And again, Mary and Martha objected. They said, "No, he's been there for 4 days. He's already smelling bad." Jesus said, "Please remove the stone." And they did. And Jesus said, "Lazarus, come forth." And out he came, still dressed in his grave clothes, alive again. Someone has said that if Jesus hadn't said, "Lazarus, come forth," every dead person in every burial place in the world would have raised. And someday it's going to be like that. When Jesus comes again, he's going to say, "Come forth," and Carol will come forth in that day, and we shall see her again. We visited Calvary. We went to the burial place where Jesus was buried. We went into that tomb where he lay. And I want to tell you, There's only an empty slab there. Jesus isn't there anymore. That tomb is empty because Jesus arose. And so it is that one day we will be able to see the place where Carol may have laid. I understand she's going to have her ashes spread in various places, but she won't be there. She will arise and be alive again and be with us and be with Jesus. Bill and Gloria Gaither, who I know are very favorite musicians of yours. Bob loved music so much, and Carol did as well. Speaking of that day, they've written these words. They all walked away. Nothing to say. They just lost their dearest friend. All that he said. Now he was dead. So this was the way it would end? The dreams they had dreamed were not what they seemed now that he was dead and gone. The garden, the jail, the hammer, the nail. How could a night be so long? Then came the morning. Night turned into day. The stone was rolled away. Hope rose with the dawn. Then came the morning. Shadows vanished before the sun. Death had lost, and life had won, for morning had come. Someday, we know that Carol, who closed her eyes with faith in Jesus, with full confidence that she had been redeemed by him, someday she will come forth again. In the Desire of Ages, page 331, Ellen White says this: those who take Christ at his word and surrender their souls to his keeping will find peace and quietude. Nothing of this world can make them sad when Jesus makes them glad. There's perfect rest. As through Jesus we enter into rest, heaven begins here. We respond to his invitation, come, learn of me, and in thus coming, we begin the life eternal. Carol certainly had that experience. And today she simply rests, waiting for the day when Jesus will call her forth on that resurrection morning. The question we should all ask ourselves then is, how about me? If I were in the place where Carol is now, would I have been ready to lay down life's burdens? As she surely was. The promise in Revelation 21:4 is very precious to all of us. It says, and God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. And there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. Vern Jackson, another singer I'm sure Bob and Carol knew and loved, has given us a wonderful assurance in his song. Remember back in the old days, people used to put a wreath up on the front door of their house when there was someone who died. Jan often reminds me of her grandfather when he was very ill. Her parents were called to come and see him if they wanted to see him before he died. They traveled quickly to the home, but as they came down the road, made the turn before the house, they saw the wreath on the door, and they knew that he had already died. He was only 51 years old. But Vern Jackson sings the song with these words that I'm sure are Bob's words as well. If I could count the tears that have fallen, it would seem like an ocean to me. And if my heart were a window you could look through, oh, the pain and scars you would see. I question the loss of a loved one. The grave seems so final and cold. But we'll meet again where death has no victory, in a land where we'll never grow old. I've never met one man without sorrow, never looked into eyes with no pain. But there's a land where grief is a total stranger, and joy is the only song they sing. Tears will never stain the streets of that city. No wreath of death on my mansion door. Teardrops aren't welcome beyond the gates of glory, because the heart will never break anymore. Praise the Lord. Amen. That day is coming, and it's coming soon, and what joy it brings for all of Carol's family and friends. We've always been made to believe this, that we'll receive a crown of glory in that heavenly kingdom, and that there will be a star on the crown for each soul we have won to the Lord. You know that. Bob and Garwin went to India many times and preached in a place called Angol in India. It's an area where there was only one small company of believers. Bob and Garwin were there doing their work. Bob preached the message in evangelistic meetings, and more than 50,000 people came to a single meeting. They were coming from everywhere to hear the gospel. More than 20,000 people were baptized in that effort and others there in the area. Bob and Garwin built churches, 55 of them to contain the new people who had been won to the Lord. There will be many stars in Bob's crown and Garwin's crown as well. But as Tiger and Sydney sang so beautifully, Carol was the wind beneath his wings. And for every soul he has won, Carol too will have a star in her crown, I know. There's a beautiful song that expresses something that is really special to me. It's called A Pile of Crowns, and it's written by Rodney Griffin of the Greater Vision Singing Group. Ellen White says in Maranatha, page 39, on Christ's coronation day, he will not acknowledge as his any who bear spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but to his faithful ones he will give crowns of immortal glory. And in Revelation 4, verses 10 and 11, it says, the 24 elders fell down before him who sits on the throne and worship him who lives forever and ever, and cast their crowns before the throne, saying, you are worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for you have created all things. With that message in mind, Rodney has written A Pile of Crowns. He says, I dreamed I crossed to heaven's side. An angel said, I'll be your guide. I'll lead you through the land so vast, and I will save the best for last. The mansions bright, the golden street were greater sights than I had dreamed. But when I gazed upon his throne, I saw a pile of crowns laid before the Holy Lamb. One by one, the saints had come to thank the Lord for all he'd done. No greater sight in heaven I found than a holy God and a pile of crowns. My gain on earth was now as loss. This crown I'd earned I was unworthy of, but I made my Savior smile when I laid it on the pile. Lord, I saw a pile of crowns laid before the Holy Lamb. One by one, the saints had come to thank the Lord for all he'd done. No greater sight in heaven I found than a holy God and a pile of crowns. Bob was often up front. Carol was not. Bob preached, and many, many individuals were won to the Lord through his ministry. You'll have many stars in his crown. Carol will, too. Amen. Carol will lay her crown on the pile before Jesus. I'm sure Bob will as well. Carol will receive the credit for every soul that Bob has won, for she was indeed the wind beneath his wings. He and all of us will miss her greatly. We sincerely thank God for giving her to us for these almost 83 years. Rest well now, Carol. We love you. We'll see you in the morning. Amen.
Not really sure how these things work. I'm not usually up here. For those of you that may not have noticed, we have special little cards like this over on the table over there. We decided to do this because we're going to put together a nice little memory book about my mom. Like has been mentioned before, I'm going to have a really hard time getting through this, but as we mentioned before, we've been all amazed at the amount of cards that we received, many of them with special memories. So even if you've even sent us a card with a memory, please fill one of these out. If you have something memorable about my mom, we really appreciate it. And now I'm going to start the time for family sharing. It's going to be hard for me, so please bear with me. There's so much about my mom that stands out that it's really hard to narrow down what I wanted to say today. I'm going to share a couple of quick little things, and I think what you hear shine through all of these wonderful memories is her love, compassion, and beautiful grace that she lived her life with. She literally was the sweetest little thing that I think all of us could agree on. And I'm feeling a loss right now that is unimaginable. And I'm sure a lot of you are feeling the same thing. I keep thinking about a song that Tim McGraw wrote called Always Be Humble and Kind. And that was my mom. The first part of that song says, there was a lot that comes by the front door. And that totally reminds me of my childhood, because there was a lot that came by our front door. And my mom was always there welcoming everybody in. Back then, we never locked our doors. And my dad was a youth director here at this, not this church, but Puyallup Seventh Adventist Church, different location. Seems like my whole upbringing, my dad was the youth director, and I loved it. I think I was the youngest youth throughout the whole history of the youth, because I never wanted to go to class. I wanted to go to the youth class since I was that big. So my whole life, it seemed like my dad was the youth director. And never was there a Saturday evening where there wasn't laughter and games and friends coming and going from our house. And I specifically remember one time, because my dad always made it very clear, all the youth were welcome at our house. It didn't matter when, where, if you were going through a tough time, if you're just hungry and you wanted a bite to eat, our place was the place to come. And I specifically remember one day coming home with the family, and there was somebody in our kitchen, Danny Ringering. Some of you probably remember him. He was in the kitchen making a sandwich. That's how open our house was and how welcoming my mom was. She was always there, being the wind beneath all of our wings. And I remember my dad was famous for, at church every Sabbath, I mean, he was always on the lookout for somebody who maybe was there on their own, didn't have a place to go eat. And he was famous for inviting people home to have lunch with us after church. And my mom, bless her little pea-picking heart, she never complained. She always just said, well, that's okay, we'll just break out another can of scallops. No big deal. And boy, did she make the best homemade tartar sauce for that those scallops. It was amazing. She was an amazing cook. I never once, ever remember not having a good meal that my mom prepared. She was also supportive of my goals and ambitions. And another part of that song by Tim McGraw said, "Don't expect a free ride from no one. Don't hold a grudge or a chip, and here's why. Bitterness keeps you from flying, so always be humble and kind. When your dreams or dreaming come to you, when the work you've put in is realized, let yourself feel the pride, but always be humble and kind." She taught me that, and it's still something that I strive for every single day, because that was my mom. She was so humble and kind. I remember from an early age seeing the love between my mom and my dad. My mom really showed me how to be a loving and supportive wife. I hope my husband agrees with that. I'm not really sure how to describe it, but she was just easy. She was so easy. I never remember her complaining about anything. She always knew exactly what to say when discussing challenges in life with her. She was just so easy. She was my rock. I would go through tough times and she just knew what to say. She was so calming. She just saw the good in everyone, and she made us want to be what she saw. Everything she did was with grace and ease, being humble and full of kindness, and with that sweet little twinkle in her eye. And there's so many people that have come up to me and just said, "I'm going to really miss that twinkle in her eye." And she really did. She just had that twinkle in her eye. What a beautiful, loving smile that she had too. She would just light up anytime any of us would come see her. We'd come, drop by, take her to eat. Didn't matter really what it was. She just loved her family so much, and it didn't matter, who of us came. She would just light up. She just loved it when we'd come see her. And boy, did she know how to put herself together, right? She was an amazing dresser. And even at 82 years old, she could rock those 3-inch heels, baby. One thing you might not know about my mom is that she was a fast driver. Officer Scott Powers, if you're here, cover your ears. Mom loved to drive fast. And I remember on more than one occasion where we'd be coming back from occasion, and Dad would be driving one car and Mom would be driving another, and they'd be racing each other down Tacoma Road in Puyallup where we were raised. That was probably where Dean got his need for speed. Crazy parents, right? But I'm sure a lot of you didn't know that about them. I have to share one last story with you. My Aunt Marion sent me a card after my mom passed, and she shared a story with me that I had never heard before. She told me about a time that they came up from Oregon to visit, and it was Easter weekend, and I was just a few years old. Apparently, I had walked in with my new beautiful Easter dress that Mom had bought me, and for some reason, Grandma Bartz wasn't as blown away as my mom thought that she should be when she saw me in this dress. And she leaned over to Aunt Marion, and she said, "When I'm a grandma, I'm going to be a really good grandma." And boy, was she ever. She was the best. I'm just super sad that she won't be around to see my grandbabies. She watched Ashley and Brandon once a week for me their entire childhood. And she did the same when her great-grandbabies came along. She watched them every week up until last fall when they sold their home in Milton. She definitely was the very best grandmother and mother that anyone could ask for. Everything I'm saying seems so inadequate to describe such an amazing woman, role model, and mother. She had such a kind and caring spirit and was usually the one taking care of others. We're just glad that she did not have to suffer long. She was so very special. I feel so fortunate to have had such a beautiful and caring mom who wasn't just the wind beneath my dad's wings, but she was the wind beneath all of our wings. Love you, Mama. Heaven can't come soon enough. I'm going to close my thoughts with a poem that I wrote the other day after picking my mom's ashes up at the funeral home, which, by the way, Ashes are more like sand, which I know my mom would get a smile on her face over that because she loved the sand and she loved the beach. But I kept walking by our fireplace, where she is right now, and I wrote this poem. She sits by the fire, all toasty and warm. She hasn't liked cold since the day she was born. There she shall stay till the time is right, now clothed with God's glorious light. When her loved ones are ready, she'll be placed with care by the ocean, creek, and her parents will be there. She'll be missed greatly, there's no doubt about that. Remembering and thinking of places she sat. Anything we can think of to stay close to her. Of this, we all seem to deeply concur. Things that she loved, we want to hold on to, like this scarf. Things that she loved, we want to hold on to. Her passion of shelling, we want to do. Each shell that I see will remind me of Mom and the life she lived with such ease and calm. This horrible loss is hard to grasp. Our memories of her will have to last. Mom, you lived your life with grace and style. We wish we had you more, at least for a while. But you've left us, and you're now at peace. Remembering good times will help our tears cease. Mama, at heaven's door, we'll meet again. Goodbye till then. Thank you.
That was beautiful, Dawn. This will be a little harder than introducing Herm. First of all, I'd like to thank Dad for giving Mom one of the most amazing lives. A life full of fun, travel, mission, adventures, and love. I can't think of one thing in life that Mom ever wanted or desired, yet that you didn't deliver for her. I love you, Dad. Mom knew that Tiger and I would probably put a video together for her, and over the years, she always says, hey, I want that one song on there, that one song at the very end. And she reminded me last summer, yeah, you put another video together when you do mine, put that song at that one. And I said, I go, okay, yeah. And then I say this fall, I go, Mom, what was the song again? She goes, you know that Sinatra song? I go, how does it go? She says, I did it Bob's way. She didn't really say that, but she would be laughing right now. I don't know. It's like Dawn was saying. I wanted to share something, and I didn't know what, and I got a million zillion thoughts, and I was thinking, I never got mad at her ever. I got mad at Dad all the time, but I never got mad at Mom. There was one time, though, I said, I was thinking it over, and I'm going, actually, there was a time I got upset with her. And it was like in the early 70s, and Mom would kind of let us just go and be wild kids in the summertime. But when school came, and we all got our haircuts and groomed and everything, and she says, Doug, it's time for you to get your haircut. And I said, well, my favorite basketball player of all time to this day is Pistol Pete Maravich. And in about 72, he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated magazine, and he was just so cool, so awesome, and he had one of these haircuts that started right here, and it just, the little tips of the hair, just was showing. I think they call it a bowl cut now, but I said, I want my haircut like that. Mom didn't know what I was talking about. She said, well, I can't, I only can do, whatever, the crew cuts. And so take him to the barber. Well, I come back, And the barber did a beautiful job. And I'm looking at the picture, I'm looking at me, I'm coming home with a big smile on my face. And Mom, she saw that haircut and she said, "What in the world? Did he even get his haircut?" And she made Dad get the I don't know if you remember this, but cut my hair completely off on it. So I was ready like normal. And so, I did forgive her for that last summer, thank goodness. She was such a cool mom. I'm telling you. I mean, if anybody who's been to my mom's house, everything is in order. Everything's clean. She's got the white glove in her back pocket, And but I was very creative as a kid, and she would allow me to do. And maybe this is a farm girl tomboy coming out, but she would let us do anything around the house, like put golf holes in our front yard. Put a ball field in the backyard, dig huge holes and play Army down by the Root Creek. In this wintertime, she let us put a hockey in our basement, a whole floor hockey set for a whole probably 3-4 months, and we played floor hockey down there. And, when it came to our room, she wanted our personality to shine, and we could choose the paint and choose, whatever we wanted to do, hang up posters. I remember Dean had the coolest poster of Wilt Chamberlain. Remember that? Right by the stairs there. And, then it came to Sonic posters, and then, it came to like rock and roll posters. And I had this huge Pink Floyd deal in my room with a pig floating around and a disco light. And I don't care, And the only time I think she questioned my judgment is one time she walked into my room, and there it was, the 2-foot by 3-foot Farrah Fawcett poster staring right at her. She never told me to take it down, but she was awesome. She was cool. So, and she also, like Dad was saying, the last 2 weeks, she loved going out to eat. She loved going out to eat. Well, if grandkids were involved or kids were involved, she would never turn it down. And in Puyallup here, when I was 7 years old, they put a brand new Dairy Queen in town here. And we didn't go out to eat. I mean, she worked the budget tight and everything. But I found myself in the car with Mom all alone. We're driving by, and where the Dairy Queen used to be is right over by Fred Meyer at the corner there. And she goes, "Hey, how would you like to go to Dairy Queen?" I go, "What? Me?" "Yes, of course." So here we are, chowing down on the best hamburgers, milkshakes, fries that you've ever seen. And she leans over and she goes, "Whatever you do, don't tell Dean or Dawn." I absolutely love that story. I'll have to say, this is all I thought about for the last 5 months is one, I got through it with one joke after another. I kept doing that, even when I was just in denial. She was in the hospital. She's lying on the bed. She's ready to go. And I'm raising her bed up going, "Here she comes, Jesus." And I just don't know how to deal with it. And finally, about 3 days ago, I says, I just got to pen a love letter to her. I just got to sit down and pen a love letter to her. And it's changed. Since then. And so bear with me on this. But this is my love letter to my mom. Mom, I'll always think of you when we feed birds or put our chickens to bed at sunset. Mom, I always think of you when I eat a delicious piece of freshly baked rhubarb pie. Mom, I always think of you when I see a beautiful petite gal all dolled up, carrying a perfectly matched purse with her shoes. Mom, I always think of you when I'm enjoying homemade applesauce with my pizza. Mom, I always think of you when I see Sydney pull out one of her American Girl dolls so she can photograph it. Mom, I always think of you when I eat a special K-bar in the middle of summer or especially at camp meeting. Mom, I always think of you when I put on a Dean Martin album or listen to Petula Clark sing Downtown. Mom, I always think of you when I smell salty, salty sea air or pick up a groovy piece of driftwood or a shell down at Owens Beach. Mom, I always think of you every time I drive by a Dairy Queen. Mom, I always think of you, and I'll miss you when I go to an antique show and you're not there when I find something really groovy and keen and you want to reminisce about it. Mom, I always miss you when I go to Dad's house now and you're not waiting on me hand and foot and you're not cleaning up your immaculate kitchen after I messed it all up. Mom, I'll always miss you when I call Dad in the mornings and I start to banter with him and jab him a little bit, and he starts to jab back, and you're there saying, "Now don't do that to Doug." Mom, I always miss you when your great-grandkids have a tea party and you're not there to pour the tea. And most of all, Mom, I'll miss the love you showed me for 58 years and your beautiful, beautiful, warm smile when you greet me when I walk into your room. I'm so looking forward to that day when the good Lord comes home to take us home. You'll be clothed in his righteousness with matching shoes and purse, I'm sure. And your first day in heaven will be looking for shells on the sandy shores of the Sea of Glass with all your grandbabies and Merrill Lee. I love you, Mom.
Hey, you guys. Follow that, my Doug, my Dean, my Donnie, my nieces and nephews, Diane, Jerry, Ashley, Nicole, Shelby, Alexandra. Who am I forgetting? All of my kids, my grandkids. And I'm here with my own kids and my grandkids. And these little great-grandkids. And this isn't what I was going to say. I'm here to read. My son wrote a beautiful tribute to his auntie. But I tell you, Jesus is already here in our hearts. You only have to hear this, all these things. We just know. I remember my mom, our mom, Rabs and mine, she taught us two things. Jesus loves you, and the golden rule. Do for others what you would do for them. Have them do for you. And now I was thinking when Doug was saying these things about his mom, and you've all heard how kind she was to everyone. Carol was so wonderful. She loved my mother. She loved our mother, Rab. And when she got older, got past 70s, and she began to have dementia, and she'd be kind of demanding. And the thing is, every now and then my kids will say to me, "You're sounding like Grandma." And I think maybe that's why. But I was never able to be as patient with her as Carol. My sister-in-law took her shopping. She took her to the grocery store. I just wanted to buy the groceries. She took her to Choose. She took her to Value Village to look at things. That was Carol. That's my sister-in-law. And it's been 61 years, 10 months, 8 months, and a few days since I met her, because Rab and Carol came to Washington State for their honeymoon. So that's when I met my sister-in-law. And the greatest fun thing we had discovering this about each other was she had 2 brothers, no sister. I have 3 brothers, no sister. I don't think we ever thought about us being sisters, but we were friends. We were friends. And Carol would call me sometimes because I was different. And we'd have these little talks. She's trying to figure something out. And when they moved out here to Washington, before Donnie was born, after Dean and Doug, my kid's father was still alive then, and we would take them all the places we knew. She became a Washingtonian right away, and I never heard her complain about the rain, ever. But she may have, but I never heard her. She loved Washington. She loved the beach. You could get down to the ocean in an hour and a half in those days because we didn't have it all developed further where it took longer. She loved Owens Beach, Doug talking about. And I remember one day we were all there at Point Defiance Park, and Doug was standing there with his dad, looking out. Well, I guess we're all there, looking out over the water, up where you have the picnic areas, kind of below where the zoo is now. And he said, the ferry was coming across, and he said, I think he was about 5, "Dad, is that the ferry that brings the money for your teeth?" You probably don't remember that, Doug. Hi, Doug. But this is the kind of fun stuff that we had. We went, because we didn't have lots of money, we went all these places that we knew to go. To Lakes Taps, that's where because we'd lived there longer, so we could go all these places you could go for free. And then, believing Doug talking about his neat, tidy mom, we all know her. By the way, this is her scarf I have, because I have one too. Because she was my brother's Valentine, and her birthday's a Valentine. So red is my choice for my sweet sister-in-law. I was going to say something. Oh, one of the things, if you can believe this, Annie Carroll used to go tent camping, tent on the ground. And this is the thing. This is where I learned. I mean, can you believe I'm older than her? I learned to put a rug in front of the tent to wipe your feet. I mean, I'd been camping all my life. Never here. Boy, did that help things. Hi, Deb. I'm just looking at my family. We all just have this love for my sister-in-law inside of us. It's so wonderful. And when we were at the care center, and the family were all in with Dr. Fueling and some of the people at the center. Jerry had brought the kids all these 3 days. They were there with their grandma. Amen. Madeline came with her dad. Jared, wherever. There she was. Samantha, Sierra, Sadie, playing train, if you will, with the wheelchair in the room. I mean, Doris Day, she was there. She saw all this. But when they were having the meeting, and Geraldine and I were there by ourselves with my sister-in-law, our Carol, and she because the last few days, she always knew us. If you'd say something to her, she would smile. She would smile. You knew she knew. And I guess she'd said this before, but what she said was, go home. She opened her eyes and said, go home. And Geraldine and I were there. It was such a gift to be there with Geraldine, to be there and hear her say that. And I will say that Carol was there with my mom the last day of her life, Carol and I, and Mrs. Wentland. Some of you will know her. She was in the same home that my mom was. And my brother was out of town. All my brothers were out of the country, I guess, all over places. But there was Carol and I. We didn't know it was so quick. And anyway, so there's just so much love, just so much love. So I'm just going to read. This is what my son wrote. My son and his Auntie Carol, she loved all my kids, but she and Skip had a special kind of something. And I'm a very, very fortunate person to have had my Auntie Carol be my aunt. I am probably the only nephew who had an aunt move from Wisconsin to Washington State with one of her purposes to see myself and two sisters go to church on the Sabbath. So with 3 small children, Auntie Carol and Uncle Bob would drive out of their way to pick up 3 others, Connie, myself, and Jackie, to go to church. 6 kids and 2 adults packed into a car. Good thing there was no seat belts or car seats for kids back then. Hey, what we used to do is pack 7 or 8 or 11. Rab and Carol and our 6 kids, we would go lots of places. And Bob always had a more reliable car than ours, so we would load them in and we would go. We would have picnics and do fun things. And it's really great to have this family of my nieces and nephews right here. And we still together. We have 35 of us when we all get together at somebody's house. It's like pure love. My aunt was the ultimate caring and supporting homemaker, and many people served her canned cherries, canned apricots, canned peaches, and applesauce. Many Sabbath guests were privileged to eat her scallops, potatoes, and chocolates, and my aunt made the best peanut butter and jam sandwich from her homemade bread. Oh yeah, she was of Wisconsin farmer stock, which is why I'm sure she always made enough for everyone to have seconds. Everyone was well cared for when they stepped into Auntie Carol's house. My aunt has been there for me through my whole life, giving me support and encouragement. As my son Jaron stated, she's a very lovely woman. When I was 15, my father died in front of our house from a heart attack. She was there. Later, she and my uncle invited me to live with them during my college years. One night, after vomiting till 2 or 3 in the morning, she was there taking me to the emergency room. At my graduation from Auburn Academy and Walla Walla College, she was there. For the big events or the little events, my Auntie Carol has always been in my life. I love my uncle for being who he is. As so many people, other people do, but we all know, Carol Bartz was specifically chosen for him by God to be his precious wife. It is hard to say goodbye to my sweet, precious Auntie Carol. My daughter, Brittany, summed it up this way. Auntie Carol and Sarah Brown will both be sitting very, very close to Jesus at the banquet table in heaven. Yes, they will. Yes, they will. And they will. So we wait for the blessed hope of Jesus' soon return. Come quickly, Lord Jesus. I love you very much, Auntie Carol. And I love her too. We all love our Auntie Carol. She was such a wonderful sister-in-law, and oh, was she ever. And my nieces and nephews, Diane and Debbie and Sylvia, all of you, Sydney and Connor now, all of you there. It's just wonderful to have you in my life, and I'm glad I'm Auntie Barbara. And I love my brother too.
Grandma, I hear. I was about 4 years old when my dad would drop me off at Grandma's so he could work. I would open her front door and yell, "Grandma, I hear." I was always so excited to spend the day with Grandma. I would have a bowl of Frosted Flakes with Grandpa while Grandma would make the best egg sandwich. We would play, she read me stories, and always painted my nails. I loved it at Grandma's house. I was so excited when my parents said we were going to live with my grandparents while we built a new house. We lived with them for about a year. My favorite memories of Grandma was every single evening she would help me with my homework and read me stories as we snuggled on the couch together. She made homework fun because she was so sweet and caring. I miss our snuggle time together the most. I feel so lucky because as of 10 years ago, I was able to now drop off Samantha and soon after Sierra, then Sadie, off at Grandma's house every Thursday. My girls experienced the same memories I had. There were days I just wanted to stay with the girls at Grandma's all day. Samantha's favorite memory is having a big glass of buttermilk with Grammy and tea parties. Sierra's favorite memory is snuggling on Grandma's small chair with her as she read her stories. She also loved making eggs with Grammy too. Sadie's favorite memory is having Grammy paint her nails, go for walks, and feed the ducks. Every Thursday, it was a part of our routine to see her. Grammy lit up every time I would bring the girls over. When they decided to sell their house and move into a motorhome, we would go over and visit and help them pack. Girls would come home with shells, purses, clothes, shoes, and all kinds of stuff. It's so very special to us now. We visited a few times in the motorhome. We played games, had sandwiches, and lots of cookies. But we couldn't stay long. Grammy was tired. We got the call that she was in the hospital. We took the girls to visit Grammy. Girls read Grammy stories, snuggled with her, held her hand, kissed her cheeks, and told Grammy what their favorite things they liked to do at her house. Grammy smiled every time that we were there. It was very sad to say our last goodbyes, but now I cannot wait until Jesus comes again. In heaven, I can say again, "Grammy, I hear."
There's so many stories I'd like to tell, but not enough time. And as I think about it, these are the many attributes I saw in the life of Carol. She was loving, kind, caring, and compassionate. She was a woman of integrity and honesty. She was persistent but patient, hardworking and fun-loving. She had a sense of adventure, which always led to fun. Her love for God's nature taught me and others about gardening, birds, flowers, and yes, seashells. There were many times when she would arrive at our house with roots or separated plants, asking me if I had a place for them, and of course I did. The shelling trips were the best times that I spent together with her. walking on the beach. On one particular trip, we were turning in for the night, getting ready for bed, when all of a sudden I heard Mom yell, "There's a scorpion on the floor, get on the bed." And that's what I did. I jumped up on the top of the bed as I proceeded to watch Carol take out her shoe and smack, smack, smack again. She went and got a piece of paper, scooped it up, took it over to the toilet, flushed it down, and said, "That's that." And we were going to bed. It took me a while to get to sleep that night. In a world where there never seems to be enough time, Mom made it a priority for whatever the cause or event to be with us or to be with others. Tea parties on the deck with grandkids, teaching me how to process and can food, visits and talks, and she attended all of her grandkids' functions, never missing a one. At any point, she could throw together the greatest meal or simply fix you an egg salad sandwich. If Pops invited more people over for lunch, she would respond, "We can always open up another can of scallops." Some of our favorites were freezer jam on her homemade bread, rhubarb pie, scallops thermidor, Brandon, mac and cheese, her scallop potatoes, and who could ever forget all those Christmas goodies she would make every year? For days on end, she would cook and bake away. Noel bars and sugar cookies were one of my favorites, and to this day, I still can't make them like Mom. In the last several months, when I could see her health, where she was not so strong, whenever I would see her, I would say, "Mom, you got your dancing shoes on? We're going out on the town." And she would laugh, and I'd see that little twinkle in her eye. The biggest impression that she left on me was her inner strength that remained so quiet. She led by a strong, silent example and gave so much. She had a positive spirit and rarely complained. 2 days before she passed, the physical therapist came in to take Mom to the gym. And after she was seated in her wheelchair, I said, "Wait just a minute." I went over to brush her hair and said, "There might be some hot guys down there, Mom." And she got a big smile, and I saw that twinkle in her eyes. There have been times that I wondered if she did that workout for me, because you see, that's the type of woman she was, always giving of herself to encourage others. Her spirit was strong, and her heart was nurturing. The example you've shown, the legacy you left, has created desire in me to demonstrate to others just as you did. I long for the day when we meet again and we're in heaven, Mom, with our dancing shoes on.
Where's Doug at? I'm a little bit upset about your situation at the Dairy Queen. And I have never heard that story before. But I do believe him. I woke up early this past Thursday, just a few days ago. First thing that came to my mind was my mom and how much I have already missed her. So I got up, went downstairs to my office, and looked up the definition of mom. And this is what I read: the woman who loves you unconditionally from birth, the one who puts her kids before herself, and the one who you can always count on above everyone else. Yes, that definition fit our mom. And as I started to think about how much she did for our family, I realized Mom was a true gem. I guess that's why her middle name was Ruby. My siblings and I, later her grandkids and great-grandkids, were very fortunate and blessed because Mom did put us first. She was the rock of our family. She taught us to be nice and kind to people around us, to help those in need, stick up for the underdog, and show compassion for others. In fact, she was on a visitation team here at church, and for years, every Tuesday, she visited shut-ins or those that needed visiting or encouragement. And some of the stuff that I'm saying has already been said, but her hospitality was second to none. No matter what Dad would throw at her, and sometimes it was the last minute, she would step up and lovingly host some family for a meal or whatever was needed. And boy, could she cook. I just recently heard Dad tell someone that for a lot of years, Mom baked 12 loaves of bread a week from scratch for our family. I do remember all the good food, and every summer she canned a lot of items. Some of my favorites, which were already mentioned here tonight, were applesauce, peaches, and freezer strawberry jam. She also bought corn from Norm right here in Puyallup and froze it every year. It tasted so sweet and was available to us at any time of the year. Some of my other favorite foods Mom cooked was mac and cheese, scalloped thermidor, cream corn casserole, and scalloped potatoes. And of course, her chocolate chip cookies and my favorite rhubarb custard pies. After Mom had passed, Debbie was going through one of her Bibles, and she found a letter from our daughter, Alexandra, that she had written to Grandma 7 years ago. It was folded up in her Bible, and I'd never seen it before. And I wanted to share it with everyone. I think all of her grandkids and great-grandkids would say, yes, this was Grandma. Grandma, Happy Christmas 2010. It would not be possible for anyone to exude more grace and poise. I love watching you greeting people in church. You always are smiling. You always have a hand to extend or a hug to give. I admire so much how you are always so put together. And even in the comfort of your own home, you are wearing a lovely matching outfit. I love watching you doing things around the house. I can clearly picture right now, even the way you wipe down the kitchen tables. Although you are rising in age, your beauty is still staggering. I would have loved to have known you at my age. Something makes me think you were quite the heartthrob. Grandpa got quite the catch. And I guess I need my reading glasses. When I read the descriptions of what women should be like from the Bible, I picture you. You know what to say, always. Your advice is well thought out and therefore well received. Your kindness is shown through your actions and words. Martha Stewart has nothing on you. If I could be half the homemaker you are, I would be more than satisfied. I can't express in words how much it means to me that I can come over whenever and talk with you and Grandpa.
This is the first time I've read this.
Not only?
No, I mean, I wrote it, but I didn't
Not
read
only?
it. Where? Okay.
Right here, not only?
Don't leave me, though. Okay.
Not only?
Maybe I can't read my own handwriting. Okay. Not only that, but I always eat homemade strawberry jam and bread. But lately I've been liking raspberry. A home away from home, a comfort beyond belief. Childhood memories are 1,000 strong at your house. You taught me a woman's roles before society forced them on me. Grandpa's a little communist. Oh, I loved our tea parties, and I'm talking for all of us grandkids on the floor. The dress-up box downstairs, and the Sound of Music marathon, which I'm actually going to interlude that Grandma and Grandpa protected us so much. Back when we were kids, the Sound of Music was on VHS, and we never saw the second tape until we were in our 20s, like at the end when they're running from Nazis. We literally didn't know that was part of the Sound of Music until we were in college. Side note. Where was I? Okay. I've grown up watching a woman of Christ support a mission-minded husband. I've seen your firm hand of discipline, but I felt your unconditional love and gracious, kind heart. Grandma, I want to be like you in so many ways, and I love you more than you could ever know. I'm so happy this Christmas we can have our cup of tea.
Love, Alexandra.
Are you going to help me through this? You know, everything that was said is just so true. Many of you out there, I mean, it's obvious you're here. We're touched by her. And I was very fortunate to be a part of this amazing family. And to be strengthened and nurtured and comforted and loved by Carol at such a dark time in my life. And as Pastor Herman Bauman mentioned, that I lost my parents in a tragic plane crash at 21. And they have always been my rock in growing up. And my dad at my wedding, he always introduced Bob as my godfather. I chose them. I know they said they chose me. I chose them at such a young age. And, I mean, of course, Bob was my youth director. But Carol, I remember, of course, Dean and I don't know how that is, we were in the same class. He's still older than me. But I remember she drove, I think, for every field trip, and I admired her. Classy. But she was there for me, holding me up in her quiet way. But I always admired her, and I was able to tell her that in the last, I think, week. She was there. She knew it. But her grace, her hospitality, she had a servant's heart. And what brought her the most joy was to be able to serve others. And when Christ was here on this earth, what did he tell us to do? And she was so happy when Bob was up front speaking. If only you could see her face, and she was sitting there, edge of her seat. She was the one that would edit his sermons. To see him shine brought him so much joy. To see others shine brought her joy. In her kids, in her grandchildren, in her great-grandchildren. But she's taught me so much. Patience. As well as appreciation for birds and, yes, of seashells. I'll never forget walking in their house soon after she had come home from one of her shelling trips. And the smell, just as she's cleaning shells, it would hit you. Only she had this love, and other shellers had this love for the smell of shells before they're cleaned. And Bob there complaining, "Carol, that smell's got to go."
And I was fortunate enough to have her shell journal. I was amazed. I mean, every little shell, she logged in there, where it was found, the family it came from. She took such care in her shells. She cataloged them, she put them away in a special place. I was fortunate enough to get her shell cabinet, which hours and hours and hours. I mean, she not only collected them, she'd clean them, identify them, she'd shine them up. But I remember shelling with her one time. It was right out here off of Titlow Beach. And she was ahead of me. I was walking, and or behind me. Ones that I would overlook, she'd pick up. That I didn't think had any value. But she'd pick them up. And she'd appreciate them, and I knew I had seen them and walked by them. That's the way she looked at others. And she'd come to church, and I've heard from many of you, a lot of young people, now grown, but as a young person, they said when they were here, she would always make sure she'd go over and let them know how happy she was to see them. She made them feel valued. That was Carol. And I was so privileged to have my children experience that as well as my grandchildren. And the memories they have, my grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, they know her as a loving, patient Grammy. And I always think, what can I learn from this? How do we go from here? What did I learn from her? How can I be a better person? And it's showing people the value that God sees in them. She doesn't overlook people. So I do look forward to that day. It's the night before I passed. I told her it was okay to go. And she smiled and had such peace. It's so comforting to know she's safe until Jesus comes. She is safe and she's not suffering. But I feel I'm a better person because of what she taught me. We all are. And I miss you very much, but I know it won't be long. As I've told my granddaughters, only Jesus can wake her up. He has the breath of life, that he will come and shake her. Grammy, it's time to go home. Your grandbabies want to have a tea party with you. We're going to go home and have a big tea party.
A, you're adorable. B, you're so beautiful. C, you're a cutie full of charm. D, you're a darling. And E, you're exciting. And F, you're a feather in my arm. G, you look good to me. And H, you're so heavenly. Ah, you're the one I idolize. J, you're like Jack and Jill. K, you're so kissable. L is a love light in your eyes. M, N, O, P, I could go on all day. Q, R, S, T, alphabetically speaking, you're okay. You made my life complete, and V means you're very sweet. W, X, Y, Z. It's fun to wander through the alphabet with you, to tell you what you mean to me. M, N, O, P, I could go on all day. Q, R, S, T, alphabetically speaking, you're okay. Well, you made my life complete, and V means you're very sweet. W, X, Y, Z. It's fun to wander through the alphabet with you, to tell you what you mean to me.
Every kiss, every hug seems to act just like a drug. You're getting to be a habit with me. Let me stay in your arms, I'm addicted to your charms. You're getting to be a habit with me. I used to think your love was something that I could take or leave alone, but now I couldn't do without my supply. I need you for my own. Oh, I can't break away, I must have you every day, as regularly as coffee or tea. You've got me in your clutches and I can't get free. You're getting to be a habit with me. I must have you every day, as regularly as coffee or tea. You've got me in your clutches and I can't get free. You're getting to be a habit with me. You're getting to be a habit with me.
But you're lovely, with your smile so warm and your cheeks so soft. There is nothing for me but to love you, just the way you look tonight. and that laugh that wrinkles your nose touches my foolish heart.
Sweetheart, never, never change. Keep that breathless charm. Won't you please arrange it? 'Cause I love you and the way you look tonight.
Oh, but you're lovely, with your smile so warm and your cheeks so soft. There is nothing for me but to love you, just the way you look tonight.
Just the way you look
You're not a kid anymore. You're not a kid anymore.
When people ask of me, what would you like to be? Now that you're not a kid anymore.
You're not a kid anymore.
I know just what to say. I answer right away. There's just one thing I've been wishing for. I wanna be Bobby's girl. I wanna be Bobby's girl. That's the most important thing to me. And if I was Bobby's girl, if I was Bobby's girl, what a faithful, thankful girl I'd be. Each night I sit at home, hoping that he will phone. But I know Bobby has someone else.
You're not a kid anymore.
Still in my heart I pray, there soon will come the day when I will have them all to myself. I wanna be Bobby's girl. I wanna be Bobby's girl. That's the most important thing to me. And if I was Bobby's girl, if I was Bobby's girl, what a faithful, thankful girl I'd be. What a faithful, thankful girl I'd be.
Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold my hand. In other words, darling, kiss me. Fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true. In other words, I love you. Fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true. In other words, I love you.
I love those dear hearts and gentle people who live in my hometown, because those dear hearts and gentle people will never ever let you down. They read the good book from Friday till Monday. That's how the weekend goes. I've got a dream house I'll build there one day, with picket fence and rambling rose. I feel so welcome each time that I return, and my happy heart keeps laughing like a clown. I love the dear heart and gentle people who live and love in my hometown, who live and love in my hometown.
Was it in Tahiti? Were we on the Nile? Long, long ago, say an hour ago, I recall that I saw your smile. I remember you. You're the one who made my dreams come true. A few kisses ago. I remember you. You're the one who said I love you too. I do. Didn't you know? I remember too a distant bell and stars that fell like rain out of the blue. When my life is through and the angels ask me to recall the thrill of them all, then I shall tell them I remember It's not the pale moon that excites me, that thrills and delights me. Oh no. It's just the nearness of you. It isn't your sweet conversation that brings this sensation. Oh no, it's just the nearness of you. When you're in my arms and I feel you so close to me, all my wildest dreams come true. I need no soft light to enchant me if you'll only grant me the right to hold you ever so tight and to feel in the night the nearness of you.
It's not the pale moon that excites me, that thrills and delights me. Oh no, yes, just the nearness you. It isn't your sweet conversation that brings this sensation. Oh no, yes, just the nearness of you. When you in my arms and I feel you so close to me, all my wildest dreams come true. Yeah. I need no soft lights to enchant me if you only grant me the right to hold you ever so tight, yeah, babe, and to feel in the night, babe, the nearness of you.
When you're in my arms and I feel you so close to me, all my wildest dreams come true. I need no soft light to enchant me if you'll only grant me the right to hold you ever so tight and to feel in the night the nearness of you.
When you can't open your mouth without a song jump right out of it. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. My, oh my, what a wonderful day. Plenty of sunshine heading my way. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. Mr. Bluebird's on my shoulder. It's the truth. It's actual. Everything is satisfactual. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. Wonderful feeling, wonderful day. Yes, sir. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. My, oh my, what a wonderful day.
Oh, plenty of sunshine in the way. Zippity-da-da, zippity.
Mr. Bluebird's on my shoulder. It's the truth, it's actual. Everything is satisfaction. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. Wonderful feeling, feeling this way. Zoom, 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 zoom. Mr. Bluebird's on my shoulder. It is the truth, it's actual. Huh? Why is that bluebird? Everything is satisfaction. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. Wonderful feeling, wonderful day.
You know, we dancers have got to stick together.
Absolutely. We should be together like the walls and ceiling,
Like a door and doorknob,
like the hat on your knob,
like butler goes with doorbell.
keyhole with key. I think we'll get by if you'll stick with me.
We should be together
like the frame and pictures,
like shoes and stockings,
like the clock's tick-tocking.
like tap and toe, like high and low.
Stop and go, honey, you're a perfect lady.
You're a regular guy.
Oh, thanks.
We should be together, you and I.
You're a cup of coffee.
Ho-ho! You're a peachy pie.
We should be together, you and I.
When you wish upon a star, makes no difference who you are. Anything your heart desires will come to you. If your heart is in your dream, no request is too extreme. When you wish upon a star, as dreamers do. Like a boat out of the blue, fate steps in and sees you through.
I've been humming to myself practically all summer, and I guess you have too. I guess it's time now that I came right out with My Happiness, the song made popular by those Elko favorites, John and Sandra Steele. Evening shadows make me blue when each weary day is through. How I long to be with you, my happiness. Every day I reminisce, dreaming of your tender kiss, always thinking how I miss my happiness. A million years it seems have gone by since we shared our dreams, but I'll hold you again. There'll be no blue memories then, whether skies are gray or blue. Any place on earth will do, just as long as I'm with you, my happiness. A million years it seems have gone by since we shared our dreams, but I'll hold you again. There'll be no blue memories then, whether skies are gray or blue. Any place on earth will do, just as long as I'm with you, my happiness.
Wow, what a life. Everything that was said was depicted in those pictures. As I said, Bob was our youth director. And growing up here as a youth, and Jackie and Vicki are here, and I'm so glad you're here. Jackie and Vicki Dill, that was maiden name, Patty and I, my sister and I. Of course, we grew up together. We rode to school together, rode to grade school together, as well as when we were in the academy. We carpooled, but we also would sing as we drove in the car. We loved to sing. And the four of us, we harmonized. And when we got into the youth department, we did a lot of singing. And Bob, he would speak at different churches, and he'd take Vicki, Jackie Dill, and Patty and I. We were called the Sunshine Sisters. And we would sing. And we were talking today of how that enriched our lives. And you taught us so much. Boy, and he'd wheel into our driveways to pick us up early Sabbath morning, because maybe we'd have to go, he'd have to speak at Winlock Church, and we were singing, and boy, you just don't dare be late. We'd come running out of the house with with toast in one hand and curlers in our head, and we had our brush, and we just wouldn't be late. But there was one particular song, too, that we sang, that on Sabbath we would go to a local nursing home here. We went quite often as youth. And Dawn, I remember you there tagging along. And we would go in to the nursing home and go down the hallway and go into the dining hall. And residents there would all meet in the dining hall. Jackie on her guitar, Patty on hers, and we would sing, and many of the other youth would sing with us. But there was one old black gentleman that sat in the hall that we'd invite to come down. And his name was BJ. He'd always had his head hung down. Never would he join us, but we always invited him week after week. And head always down. I don't know his story, but we would always stop and we would greet him and invite him. And on one particular Sabbath we were there, we chose to sing the song to BJ. And this song meant so much to our family. And it became Carol's favorite song, which we sang bedside the night before she passed. And she had a smile on her face. But this song, as we sang there in the hallway, we surrounded him and we sang, "Lord, build me a cabin in the corner of Glory Land." It's an old song, so some of you who know it might date you, but BJ sat there with his head down, but tears started rolling down his face. We don't know his story, and we like to believe that someday we'll see him in heaven. We touched something in his heart. But Patty, why don't you come up and join me? And Dennis and Zion are going to accompany us. And this song, it means so much because it's what we believe. It's what Carol believed in heaven. We'll meet there someday.
Just a cabin in the corner of Glory Land, in the shade of the tree of life, that it may ever stand, where I can just hear the angels sing and shake Jesus' hand. Lord, build me a cabin in the corner of Glory Land. I have many dear loved ones who have gone on before, on the great Lord, build me a cabin in the corner of glory.
Then why don't you sing that chorus again with us? Build me a cabin.
Yes, build me just a cabin in the corner of glory land, in the shade of the tree of life, that it may ever stand.
Where I can just hear,
where I can just hear the angels sing
and shake Jesus' hand.
Jesus' hand. Lord, build me a cabin in the corner of glory land.
Amen. Why don't you stand and we'll sing Blessed Assurance for our closing song. Jesus is mine.
Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine, heir of salvation, purchased of God, born of His Spirit, washed in His love. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long.
Let's sing that chorus one more time.
This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long, praising my Savior all the day long.
Dear Jesus, thank you for Carol. Thank you for her love and memory. And may it continue to inspire all of us here to live in a way that would make her smile and make her eyes twinkle. And in a way that gives each and every one of us the assurance of salvation, the blessed assurance that one day you will come back, and in the twinkling of an eye, everything will be changed and made new, and we will live with you and Carol forever. Amen.
We would also like, as you leave, of course, we have refreshments in the back, but we also have a basket back there of shells. They're right up here, that we would like each of you to take a little shell as a memory of her and her passion. And but come join us for our refreshments.